60 rolls on across the OutKick network from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine.
Sometimes the conversation just rolls right into the...
Too good.
I feel like sometimes we're going to open the show, and I'm just going to be mid-sentence. And that's when I fell off the boat. And then we're back, on OutKick 360.
At some point, we're going to be screwed on the off-the-air
Get the dump
conversation.
button ready, Colin.
FCC
be ready on
Park
that dump button at all times.
Problematic.
We were discussing the pork chop.
Never know.
The pork chop down at Perry's in Franklin.
Which is one of the best meals I've ever had and the best piece of pork I've ever had.
Which then prompted me, Hutton said, "Oh, Chad, you've been." And I'm like, "Have I?" And I had to Google it and look at the building, and I've never actually been. We've talked about me going, but I've never gone. And now I'm craving a pork chop.
I bet our guest has gone.
Yes. Jay Cutler joins us. NFL vet, Vanderbilt's own, now with Outsider. Follow him on Twitter. Sometimes he tweets. At Jay Has Tweets. Jay, good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me on. I've been to Perry's a few times. That pork chop is good.
Is it the best thing on the menu? That's what I tell everyone.
It's unbelievable.
It's they do a good job there. I tell you what, for being, a steakhouse kind of out in the suburbs, they've figured it out.
How tough is it to order pork chop at a place that goes by steakhouse? Because that would be my challenge, is to go away from a steak at a steakhouse.
Well, I think, usually I go with my kids. So, they'll order a steak, I'll get the pork chop, and then I'll just kind of clean up the rest of it. So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Chad, it's not that hard once you've had the pork chop
to go back.
To have the pork
but
chop.
It's taking the plunge.
First time
I got to get to the first time. Yeah.
Hey, Jay, tell us what you're doing with Outsider and Shannon Terry and the entire group there. It looks really cool.
Thank you. I think you guys probably know Shannon and that group pretty well. He's kind of been established in Nashville for a while with Rivals and 24/7 Sports. So he kind of approached me maybe a year ago, and, he had this idea of Outsider. And I think the way the kind of world was going with COVID and everything, everyone was kind of trying to get outside as much as possible and do some fun stuff. So we kind of launched this media lifestyle brand, and Shannon's unbelievable at media and SEO and all that stuff. So he can build it from the ground up. And, I've been kind of trying to do the lifestyle stuff, and we've got hats and, cupware. And I think we're probably gonna be launching a beer here in the next, hopefully, month.
Cigars. I heard cigars.
Cigars. Yeah. Cigars are there. We've got, I think we maybe have a cooler coming out. So, we're just kind of, technically we're still a startup. We're here in Nashville, and, we're just doing some fun stuff. So it's worked out well, I think, for both of us.
Let's go right to one of your former teams. And I know it's super early in camp and you can't take too much away, but reports coming out of Chicago are the ball's on the ground. They're fumbling everything. The protection is horrible. What do you anticipate? And we've talked a lot, Jay, about young quarterbacks whose teams went out of their way to bring them receivers, to bring them protection. Philadelphia, Miami, the Jets have gone crazy to help their guys. In Chicago, no such thing. What are your hopes and expectations for Justin Fields and the new staff there?
Justin, I think he's a really talented quarterback. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think he's got to get better in the pocket. It's hard. It's hard as hell, to learn a new system and go with different coaches. So as a rookie to second year to completely different language, there's going to be some bumps and bruises. That's just kind of how it is. So it doesn't surprise me that's the reports coming out of there. And I think talent-wise, they're probably not as good on the outside. They need some skill guys. They need some help around them. And you couple that with learning a new system, learning the ins and outs of the new coaching staff. They might have a different schedule. It's just a lot to take on as a young guy. And this has been said time and time again. You look at some of the really successful quarterbacks, and there's consistency there. They're with the same coaches. They're with the same system. They build it year after year after year instead of starting over. And that's what Justin has to do right now. He's starting over. So, you got to be patient.
Did I see where they're doing a race downtown in Chicago, a street race?
I know they're doing one in Nashville this weekend.
Yeah. I think like NASCAR is going there or something.
I think that's the new thing, because Miami did it. Nashville did it last year. Indy comes, I think, Sunday.
Yeah.
Indy's here. And you're right. Chicago's doing one downtown as well.
That's going to be cool. I haven't seen the course, the track, but man, the setting next to the river and stuff should be awesome. Jay Cutler with us. Jay Has Tweets on Twitter. You can check him out at Outsider, among other spots if you're in the Middle Tennessee area or across the Southeast. We'll get into some college in a moment. We were discussing briefly yesterday the everything going on with the Dolphins, the tampering with Brady. How common is it that agents and teams chat? We see trades go down. We see guys agree to contracts even prior to the legal tampering period of free agency. At a minute into free agency, guys were agreeing to contracts. I mean, it's about keeping things quiet, right? I mean, I'm assuming you would know a lot better than we would on how the chat goes behind the scenes.
I mean, there's constant communication, whether it's legal or illegal, whether it's in the certain time frame for free agency, whether it's right before. GMs and agents and owners. I mean, it's a small circle whenever you boil it down. I mean, there's only so many agents, there's only so many GMs, there's only so many owners, and they all know each other. They're all going to talk. They're all going to wonder, hey, like, what's happening with this guy? What's happening with this guy? And agents want to get, they want to get their name out there. They want to get their guys' names out there and be like, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what we want. He wants to move. He wants to stay. So, I think it's just part of the game. And obviously, I think when you start dealing with big time guys like a Brady or a Peyton, like, you got to be a little bit more careful because they're going to attract a lot of noise.
Did you feel like you always had a working idea of the teams that really liked you across the league, just in random conversations you would have with your agent, that he would always know, okay, if something goes south, here would be a trade partner, here's a possible free agent destination? Did you always know that?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of had a feeling for which teams liked you, which teams didn't like you. But it's also now I think it's become more of a, the NFL it's a retread organization. So, GMs and assistant GMs and coaches and assistant coaches, they're all just getting retread over and over again. So if I'm a head coach and you're my DC or OC, at some point, I mean, there's only one guaranteed for the most part is you're going to get fired. So that DC or OC, they're going to get a job and they're going to hire me. So, those guys all kind of keep in touch. So I think it's more of a, almost a game of telephone with these guys that you've worked with. So if you've worked together and, I'm the GM for whoever, and I've worked with somebody for, at KC, like I'm going to work with him rather than work with somebody I have no idea about.
You guys are always kind of connected to their draft class. That was a big quarterback draft class with you, Vince Young, and Matt Leinart. How well did you get to know them just like through the combine process? And how much, as you saw them during your career, were you kind of connected from having been drafted the same class?
I didn't really know him that well. I knew Vince a little bit because through Steve McNair. And then Matt was supposed to be training down in Florida, and I went down there because I was like, I'll train next to him and see kind of what's what. And he didn't come down there. And then neither one of them threw at the combine. I don't even think they did anything at the combine. And then I think I played both of them my second year. We beat them both. And then after that, it's just, I didn't run into him much at all. I ran into Vince a couple of times in Nashville, but didn't spend a lot of time with either one of those guys.
I remember the preparation for that draft. A lot of the talk around you and the other two guys was, well, Jay Cutler looks great, but he was at Vandy, but the overall record was this. But then people would also argue on your behalf and say, but he did this at Vandy. I mean, look what he was having to deal with. What are some of the things that Matt Leinart at USC, Vince Young at Texas, that really any quarterback just could not learn that you learned while taking those lumps at Vanderbilt with that program that they wouldn't know that you knew going into the draft?
It's a solid question. I think that went through a lot of adversity at Vandy. You had to make plays. Most of the time the other team had more talent than us. So you had to go beyond it and figure it out and, find your one-on-ones and understand coverage. I think some of these guys that come out that play at these big schools that are just surrounded by talent, you get to the NFL and it's like, oh, wait a second. The other team's just as good as my team now, if not better sometimes. And some of these quarterbacks that go to these big schools and get drafted in the first, 5 picks, they're going to bad teams. I mean, it just is what it is. And they're most Sundays they're going to have to go out there and, their team's not going to be as good as the other team. And you've got to figure it out. You've got to take some hits and understand that this is going to be a tough road. You're going to have to go through some adversity, and you have to find a way to get to the fourth quarter and give yourself a chance to, make enough plays that maybe you can win a game, because the NFL, it even it out and it'll humble you in a hurry.
Jay, did you ever sign a contract that had language in it that stipulated independent study time during the week for a game? That was never included in one of your contracts?
No, it wasn't. That language, I mean, we know why that language isn't there. They want them to study more. They feel like maybe it's lacking a little bit. So that language isn't just for fun. I mean, they put it in there for a reason. And obviously, I mean, monitoring that is going to be difficult, I think, for them. But, they'll do what they'll figure it out, I guess.
The thing that really sticks with me is if you have a guy who is not into the behind-the-scenes study on his own type quarterback. Yeah. You still gave him the money, right? Like you're investing in him, so you still like the attributes of the quarterback. And I'm thinking to myself, what does 4 hours really mean in a given week for a quarterback in terms of studying the defense? I mean, it's something. It's not the bare minimum, but I mean, if you ask me on average how much I think NFL quarterbacks study on their own, I would say well over 4 hours. To me, that's a very low number to expect.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of downtime in an NFL day too. So like at lunch, you're in there. You're usually one of the first guys in there in the morning, so you're in there. You usually stay a couple hours afterwards, and you're watching stuff. And then there's during special teams meetings, you're watching more film. And then, going home, you'll watch some more, but if you're playing somebody in your vision, like you already have a pretty good idea of like what you're going against. And there's only so many things you can do, defensively or offensively. I think that if you look at that contract and you want to speculate, I mean, he probably wasn't watching much film at all, I guess.
A lot of us are super high on Justin Herbert as a guy that's going to join this list of very good quarterbacks, particularly in the AFC. Are we on target with that, or is he getting overhyped maybe?
No, love it. Whenever he came out, I told my agent, Bus Cook, I was like, go after him. He's a stud. He's going to be a stud. Big, athletic, has a cannon. And as big as he is and as long as he is, he gets rid of the ball pretty quick. Like some of those guys get really long and slow, and he's not like that at all. And I think he's got a really good upbringing, good kid. I'm super high on him. I really like him. And my oldest son is all over the Justin Herbert train, so he's usually spot on.
Jay Cutler, our guest on OutKick 360. You know what it's like to be traded to an organization and find a fit with the OC. I don't remember who was there in Chicago before Mike Martz, but it was
Ron Turner.
Okay, so it was brief. It was real brief whenever you got traded. But in looking at Wilson matched up with Hackett in the background in Green Bay, and now he's going to Denver. You think he's going there to exceed expectations or high ones? Do you think he's able to do exactly what he was doing in Seattle and Denver based on the makeup of the offense, which looks pretty good considering that he's bringing back all of his receivers that were there last year, and they're bringing back the same stable of running backs?
I think it's a perfect system for him, honestly. I think you look at Aaron and what he does, and that getting out of the pocket, it's West Coast, getting rid of the ball, be able to play make. And, they've got some dudes there. They got some running backs. I think it's a great situation for him. I think he's leaving a good offensive team at Seattle too. They had some dudes there too. They had some receivers. So he knows how to make plays. And so I think this system actually is kind of perfect for him.
I started off by mentioning three guys that had big off seasons in terms of what their teams did for him. Tua in Miami, Wilson with the Jets, Hurts in Philadelphia. If you had to bet on one of those three guys being in position to be a starter without much question in 2023 in his current situation, who do you think's got the best shot?
Who is it? Hurts, Tua, and who's the third?
Wilson with the Jets.
Russ by far.
No,
You know,
Zach Wilson.
Sorry,
He's saying
Zach Wilson.
Oh, yeah. Zach Wilson. I like Zach Wilson too. I mean, I'm going to stay on the Wilson train. I like Zach. Joe D there, the GM, Rex Hogan, some of those guys, they know what they're doing. They're smart. They know how to bring talent in. I think Zach Wilson has a huge upside. The other two, I don't know. I mean, I think they're different style of quarterbacks. I'm not in love with Tua. They've got some dudes in the outside, and they're going to have to figure out ways to get to the ball creatively. But he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to extend plays like that. He's not going to rip them into small spots. They're different animals, I think. And I think Jalen has kind of the same thing as Justin has. He's got to figure out how to play from the pocket. Because at some point, that's what's going to come down to in the fourth quarter, like whether you can make plays, whether you can move the chains from the pocket and throw the ball down the field.
So when I think about quarterbacks that have that kind of perfect level of athleticism where they're not a quote-unquote running quarterback, they're more pocket guys, but they can't escape, and they could make a big play with their feet if they had to. I think of Aaron Rodgers, first and foremost. And honestly, Jay, I think about you at Vanderbilt and then your career in the NFL. I'm not trying to get you to compare yourself to Aaron Rodgers and what he's accomplished, but I do sit back and think, if you were drafted one spot, you had consistent coaching, one consistent organization, what could have happened? Not that you're Aaron Rodgers, but what could have happened with that? Do you ever sit around and think about that or compare your style at least to his style?
I think our styles were similar. I mean, I think there's a handful of guys out there that can kind of do those type of things. And, when I was in Denver, that's what we did. And Mike Shanahan, them firing him was a mistake in my mind. I think we were number 2, number 3 offense my third year. And, we had some guys around us, but we were moving the pocket. We were running the ball well, on third down, we could pick up third down and longs, and we had a young squad. So, it's fun sometimes to think about those things, but things happen for a reason. So, here I am.
So I'm watching a show hosted by our buddy and former intern, Lindsey Nance at Outsider. And you're talking about your route to Vanderbilt from Santa Claus, Indiana. This is where I learned, Jay, that apparently Vanderbilt thought you were a tight end when they initially called to talk to you. Can you please explain how this happened?
Yeah, they called the school, that's like back in the payphone era, and get called down to the athletic director's office. And I forget who it was from Vandy, but it was around Christmas break-ish. So it was late in the game. And they said, hey, we watched your film, or, this is VHS. And they're like, hey, we don't think you're athletic enough to play tight end in the SEC. And I was like, perfect. I don't even play tight end.
We're off to a good start.
And he goes, who is this? And I said, I go, I play quarterback. He goes, oh, here's our tape. Here's your tape right here. I'll watch it. And, hung up and stuff. And I'm like, no chance this dude's watching anything. And lo and behold, 2, 3, 4 hours later, they call and they're like, hey, it's between you and another guy. We got to know by the end of the day whether you're on board or not. And I'm from Southern Indiana, so I was a Notre Dame fan, Big Ten. I had no idea where Vanderbilt was. And so go home, get on the internet. That's like that old dial-up days, and find out where Vanderbilt was. Call my dad, and he's like, Vanderbilt offered you? I'm like, yeah. He goes, call him back, tell him you're in, end of story. I'm like, I don't even know where this is. He goes, I don't care. He goes, I know where it is. I know the school. Call him back immediately. And so ended up calling him back. I think I had a basketball game that weekend, and then went, I think, the next weekend on a visit, and, showed up, redshirted the first year, and then won the job my redshirt freshman year and played 4.
And then you end up going to Neyland Stadium and winning, Not
Did
bad.
That team was down. I mean, they were broken and beaten at that point. So
it's amazing though. I went to Tennessee and I was, I think, 9 months old when Vandy beat Tennessee in 1982, and I was 23 years old when Vandy won again in the series, and that was watching you beat Tennessee in that game.
That was a fun game. It was a great way to end it. So it was, Earl Bennett right there. I think he he went. I think I threw the ball every time. I think we had a 2-minute drill or so. There was probably a minute 40 to go, and I think I threw the ball to him every single play.
And it was unstoppable.
Oh yeah, I mean we were putting him in the slot. We put him outside. He was a heck of a receiver.
I think it's harder to win at Vandy now or then.
Now, by far.
See,
yeah.
Chad.
Especially in the SEC with new teams coming in, recruiting, NIL. That's an uphill battle.
We've really enjoyed our chats with Clark Lee. Yeah. We've had him in studio a couple times. Whether you question the plan or not, the guy's got a plan. Like, he knows what he wants to try to do at Vanderbilt, and he's been there. How often have you talked to him since he took the job? I feel like you'd be a guy they're definitely going to try to get in the fold to help out with things at Vanderbilt. Yeah,
I've talked to him a little bit. I played with him, so I know Clark well. It's just one of those. This is a talent-driven thing now. I mean, it's a recruiting game. It's talent, and that's it. If you can't recruit well, if you can't battle with some of these teams in NIL stuff, which Vanderbilt should. I mean, they have so much money down there. It's just whether or not they're gonna pony it up and say, hey, we'll help get some of these guys. And they got to rebuild their stadium. Some of the stuff is so outdated. They got to figure that one out. They got a long way to go. It just depends whether the school wants to back these guys or not. And that's been the problem in the past. The school says, we'll do this, this, and this, and recruits aren't going to come there. I mean, with the way the conditions are now. So, whether you have a great plan, a great system, all the things. I mean, you've got to be able to recruit and get some of these big time kids to come to Vanderbilt.
What do you think when you hear him at an SEC Media Day proclaim that they're going to be a dominant program in the country, and not really mention that the ball needs to start rolling with an SEC win for the first time in 22 games?
Well, I mean, what else is he going to say? Hey guys, we're trying to win 3 games. I mean, that's not going to help anything. So I mean, he's pinned up against the wall. Like, he's got one option to say, hey, we're going to be dominant. We're going to work our butts off. We're going to recruit well. We love our coaches. We love this, and this. That's all you can say.
How close are you with Tannehill? Because you replaced him in Miami when he went down with that injury. Did you interact with him at all that season in Miami?
Yeah, he was in every meeting. He was there. He was there throughout. He'd come. He helped me. He helped me kind of get to know all the guys, what they did, what they were good at, what they needed work on. So he was right there in the mix. Good dude. I was happy to see him, get paid here and do well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because it seems like they're putting more and more on his shoulders. And I think last year was kind of a transition for him of an offense. You get a different play caller and it's a whole different world. And I think you kind of saw that last year with how they called plays, and they put him in more situations to throw the ball downfield, where the year before that they were a lot of play action, run the ball. So it's gonna be interesting. I think they'd probably, if I was them, I'd go back and look at the last 2 years and be like, all right, this is what we did really well these last 2 years. Let's continue down this path.
Yeah, load up on 2 tight instead of 11 personnel. Then you get back to that, man.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of kicked him last year. Is a lot of 11, a lot of spinning the ball down the field, and I think Ryan does really, really well. With the play action, and then he can throw it, but I think that's where they kind of messed up a little bit last year.
Are you still wanting to do television or more TV broadcast wise with all these different networks now of streaming? Are you looking into that as well?
Talked to Amazon a little bit. Talked to maybe CBS. I would do it. I think it would have to be the right fit for me. But I think there's so many guys out there right now that want to do it. So I talked to Greg about it. He's kind of the number one dude with Fox now, and then Brady signed that big deal. So there's a lot of competition out there, and I think with Amazon, I think everyone kind of is waiting to see where does DirecTV ticket go. How does the NFL start placing some of these games with all these different streaming and TV networks? So I would do it. But I've got a full plate now.
Yeah.
All this other.
Did you ever get invited on Stephen Ross's yacht like Brady was invited on the yacht, or no?
I never got that one.
Yeah.
Man, I was hoping for a
You were
great
already
story
in.
from the yacht. Yeah.
You're already in. He didn't need to court you.
Yeah, he was. I was already there.
Jay Cutler has been our guest. Great to catch up with you, man. And by all means, if you're looking for someone to try cigars, let me know.
Yeah, I will send some over there. I think they got in last week from the Dominican. They're phenomenal. I'll get some over to you and Clay and the whole crew.
That's awesome.
Hey, we really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Jay.
Appreciate it, boys.
He's doing a great job with Outsider.
That's
and you can check out the work and follow him on Twitter. Jay has tweets. Coming up, we have complaints. Primary complaint next on OutKick 360. Coming up, we reminisce on the life and career of Vin Scully. Looking forward to chatting with Steve Garvey. He will be on in 8 minutes as we broadcast live, OutKick 360, 6th and Peabody, Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine. Will Power of IndyCar will be in studio with us. He's the current points leader. That's coming up in just over an hour from right now. Right now, well, it's time for primary complaint. Guys, I'll kick it off. My primary complaint this week is the breaking news or the just-in reports of guys in the NFL who will not be playing in the preseason opener for their team. There was a tweet that came down last night, treated as news, that Tom Brady will not be playing in the preseason Week 1 game as the Bucs take on Miami. It's treated as news because of the news yesterday tying him to the Dolphins. But he wasn't going to play anyway. And I'm tired of acting like starters play. Starters in Chicago are going to play. But the big-time relevant guys who expect to be playing in January do not play in preseason games of August. That's my primary complaint.
Big news if he is playing. Put a headline on that.
Tell me if they are playing, not if they're not playing. I'm assuming the starters aren't playing unless there's breaking news that they are. That's where we are in the sport now.
So my primary complaint, go ahead and put up on the screen, guys. It's a number I want to share with everyone because I see this number at least 5 times a day. I've blocked it. I've tried to report it. I've done everything that I can to get this damn number to stop trying to scam me. It comes across, even on my old iPhone, as scam likely. And that number that I want everyone to call right now is 615-640-8259, some number based out of Eagleville, Tennessee. Please.
I bet someone's phone in here rings.
Harass this number the way they harass me. All's fair in love and war, and I am declaring war on this number right now, and they are my primary complaint.
I'm in.
Sleepy Danny's phone will ring.
Hopefully it'll wake him up.
That would be terrific. My primary complaint, and I don't know if this is unavoidable because I understand the desire for a touchless water faucet. But I'm against a faucet to wash your hands in, a sink, that doesn't let you have any say in the temperature of the water that comes out of said sink. I would like to dictate the temperature of the water. And I don't know about the touchless water faucet that if there's a combination of a touchless sink that also is going to let me dictate the water. I think you could maybe move, maybe I could touch over here for a little colder and over here for a little hotter or something of that method. But otherwise, I'd rather be able to touch it and dictate the water temperature. Please. I want the temperature I want.
I fully agree.
Which is a little cooler than most people seem to want.
Hit us with your primary complaint at OutKick 360 on Twitter. Coming up, Steve Garvey joins us, Dodgers legend. He discusses the legend, Vin Scully, his idol. We kick off hour number 2 next on OutKick 360. OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us. And coming up in about 10 to 15 minutes, we'll get into the news that the NFL is going to appeal the Watson suspension of 6 games from Judge Sue L. Robinson. We'll discuss that and what comes next now that the NFL has filed that appeal. That's in roughly 10 to 15 minutes from now. Sports and broadcast fans, we lost a legend yesterday in Vin Scully, Dodgers play-by-play voice and the voice of baseball, passing away at the age of 94. And Steve Garvey of the Dodgers, nice enough to join us. Steve, it is great to have you on the show, and thank you for taking the time to discuss Vin Scully.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be with you, to be able to talk about my friend, arguably the best at what he did, but even more than that, he was a great American. He was in an industry where it's easy to be good, but exceptionally difficult to be the best at it. And, in LA, we've been blessed with 2, Jaime Ureen, who's a Hall of Fame Hispanic announcer, and Vin Scully. So Jaime's carrying the torch for Vin now, but we had him for 94 years, and we're all blessed by his presence.
Steve Garvey with us on OutKick 360. You were a bat boy for the Brooklyn and Los Angeles Dodgers. Is that when you first came across Vin Scully?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I grew up in the Tampa Bay area. Dad was a Greyhound bus driver. In spring of 1956, right after the Dodgers finally beat the Yankees in 55, they were world champions. And the end of March into spring training, he came home, and Dad looked at me. He said, "You want to skip school tomorrow?" And I said, "Wow, Dad. Yeah, what are we doing?" He said, "Well, I've got a charter to pick up the Brooklyn Dodgers from the Tampa airport and take them to St. Pete to play the Yankees in an exhibition game. And I think it might be a fun day for you and I." And ironically, my dad and 2 other gentlemen had started the second Little League in Tampa, and we were going to start 4 days later. So I had a brand new Heart of the Hide mitt, and I was all set to go. And we got the bus and pulled onto the tarmac early in the morning, and all of a sudden the K.O. Malley 1 landed, which was the Dodger plane, and off came Campanella and Hodges and Robinson and Snyder and the boys of summer. So that day I got a chance to bat boy. They liked my dad, and I had a chance to maybe 2 or 3 times this spring for the next 6, 7 years grow up with my idols. But I clearly remember the first person out of uniform that impressed me was Vin Scully. I think probably 2 years after that first opportunity, I'm sitting in the dugout, and this well-dressed man comes up with the silk pants and the jacket and this red hair and that voice that was so distinctive. And he had everybody had the the little microphone and the tape there, and they would do interviews, and I'm listening, and all of ears, there's the voice of the Dodgers, and I figured it was the great Vin Scully I'd heard about. So from that point, 13 years later, out of Michigan State, I'm drafted in the first round, and that next spring, I'm at Dodger Town, the iconic Dodger training facility, and it's about the 3rd day, and I'm walking down a path, and I look in front of me, and here's Vin Scully about 20 yards away. And as we got closer, I said, "Mr. Scully, I'm Steve Garvey." He says, "Oh, son, welcome to the organization. It's great to have you." And I said, I doubt if you remember, but I was a bat boy in the 50s. And he said, "Weren't you that pudgy kid with the flat top and the bushwhacks?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I think hopefully I've leaned out a little bit." But he said, we heard there was a young man who had bat boy for us had signed. So that was the beginning of our adult relationship and a wonderful friendship. But obviously, having the opportunity to play for the Dodgers and to have Vin call the games was so very special to all of us.
When you were breaking in, the story that goes, you had a tough day in the field. I think maybe you were at third base, and you heard him from the press box say, "Garvey's having a tough go of it, but I think he's going to have a long career here." And that really buoyed your spirits and gave you some confidence at a time you needed some. To have that right, and what was something like that? What did something like that feel like? And what was the crowd like that day that you could hear him?
Yeah, that's right. Well, back then, especially in the beginning of the Coliseum that was there for probably 3 to 4 years before Dodger Stadium opened in 1962, 60 years ago. Transistor radios were very, very popular. And of course, all the people in LA had heard not only about the Dodgers coming out there, but about Vin Scully, the voice of the team. So I'm a struggling third baseman, wild arm, had a shoulder separation playing football for Duffy Daugherty, Michigan State. And rough day about this time of the year, almost threw one away, and Bobby Valentine made a great stab and force out. Next ball's hit to me, and I bobble it for an error, and my head's down, and I can hear, in kind of a quiet moment, Vin is in the air, and he's just exactly what you said. The young man's struggling, but he's working hard, and probably have a good career here in Los Angeles. And 14 years later, after that moment, and when I heard that, Mr. Scully, thank you. You saved me, giving me a special dispensation today, and the fans aren't going to boo me. But that was Vin. He always looked at people from the inside out. He always treated everyone as he would like to be treated. He was very fair with them. And if you were to say what was the one virtue in terms of his announcing, is that his preparation was just impeccable. And the difference between good and great is that preparation, and nobody prepared better than Vin.
What's it like just having him as the soundtrack to such a big chunk of your career as you look back, and not just the moment that Paul had mentioned, but having someone with that gravitas that is calling your games for such a long period of time? When you look back on it, how cool is that feeling?
Well, it was. And for me, especially having remembered him, as a young boy, and then having him, welcome me to the Dodgers as an adult player. Well, almost an adult, I guess. And then through the years, the consistency of every time that we saw each other. And he was very, very close to the Brooklyn Dodgers. They all grew up together, Hodges and Scully and those guys. And when they won in 55, it was very tearful. They had finally won the world championship. And by the time I got to the Dodgers, Vin was now in late 40s, maybe early 50s. And he treated everybody the same, very fairly, wasn't close to anybody. But I think that was a wonderful philosophy on his part, so that he could always be very fair and just and not be affected by any personal relationship. But that didn't mean he still, the one thing that was interesting about Vin, he never did the post-game interview. He always would let Jerry Doggett or whomever was his sidekick, they would do a few innings, because I don't think he really wanted to talk about the post-mortem of a bad game. Not that he didn't want to talk about moments of greatness during the game, but I think he led it to his sidekick so that he could avoid any situation where he wasn't. And I say this on a personal basis because of his interviews. His interviews were always very personal in terms of he wanted you to talk. He wanted the fans to understand who you were. It was never a pointed question. I got your question. It was always, Stevie, describe that play and what you were thinking. Not why did you make that error, or how could you strike out in that situation. So it was the soul of the man that always came through, and he purposely avoided those moments where it would be very, very difficult because it just wasn't in his character. But in the essence, that's the difference in again, being good and being great and being the best of all time.
What a way to reminisce a career with the way that he went out as well in his final game calling in 2016 with the poetic way that he signed off was extraordinary given how long his career was and his age at the time.
And I was so blessed that weekend, KTLA in Los Angeles did those 3 games, and they were in San Francisco. So the irony was this dreaded rival from the old Polo Grounds and Ebbets Field was going to be Vin's final game. Of course, he had a fabulous prior to that last day in Los Angeles. But I remember the classic picture of he and his wonderful wife, Sandy, standing up there and receiving a standing ovation from a sold-out AT&T in San Francisco. So that's the ultimate compliment, to have your most dreaded rival standing and applauding and realizing that because you were so fair. By the way, if you were to listen to Vin, you would never know that he was the Dodger announcer. There was no bias. There was no overwhelming prejudice towards the team. And again, that was part of the fiber of being as great as he was. So I remember the producer was in my ear. He said, "Garvey, got a minute, wrap it up." And I'm thinking, wrap up Vin Scully in a minute. And I looked into the camera and I said, to all of you, and I'm a fan too, he's not gone. He's going to be with us. We were so fortunate to have him for 64, 65 plus years. He's still going to be in the community. And I said, I'm quite sure the Dodgers will have his voice in the air. And I give the Dodgers a tremendous amount of credit. On Rosen and the front office suite there. Ever since Vin left, as you come into the stadium, you hear his voice welcoming you. And I always say it's like he's welcoming you home to Dodger Stadium and the Cathedral of Baseball. And it will continue that way. It won't be the same to not have him here physically. I always said, like last year, that Tommy Lasorda passed away, and now he's starting every third day in the rotation behind Newcomb and Drysdale. And I think today Vin's up in heaven with the boys of summer.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Tommy Lasorda, because there's a list of names you could throw out, and you hear the name and you think Dodger, yours being one of them. You mentioned Steve Garvey. I think Dodgers immediately. But when you throw out Dodgers and then immediately start reeling off the first few names that come to mind, how quickly do you get to Vin Scully when you're talking Jackie Robinson, Sandy Koufax, Tommy Lasorda? How quick does his name come up in that list of Dodger greats, even as a broadcaster?
Well, I've always said the players are the authors and poets of the game of baseball, and everything else is sales and marketing, except for a voice like Vin's, who, and I've always said we're in the memory business. But in order to capture those memories, number one, they have to be achieved on the field, and number two, somebody has to eloquently articulate that moment. And that was Vin. He was arguably the most valuable non-uniform player in the history of the Dodgers. And to this day, if you're in and around Los Angeles, in Southern California, let alone the nation in baseball, you would have to say that one true constant has always been Vin Scully and that wonderful voice of his.
Your daughter, Olivia, is a sports reporter and anchor in D.C. How much did Vin Scully inspire her to take that direction?
Well, she, along with all of our children, grew up in and around Dodger Stadium. And they all called last night. And Olivia had a big day yesterday with the trade. And she was in the forefront there. And she asked General Manager Rizzo the last question, which made everybody laugh. She said, "We know you, we know there's more to this in the last couple hours." And he said, "Look, Olivia, you're right. Can I go back to work now?" And she said, "You can go." So I'm very proud of her. But she has wonderful pictures of her and Vin Scully, from a little girl of 6 or 7 to a grown woman now at WABC in Washington, and our son Sean, the youngest of our kids at a Michigan State, called last night. He had tears. And Ryan, who had played for the Rocky organization, showed me a picture of he and Vin Scully. So Vin touched not only myself, but our family and our children, and they all learned something from it. And I think it's how to live your life. There's an old saying that life is God's gift to us, and what we do is our gift to him. Well, God is very, very pleased with Vin Scully and how he shared who he was and with everybody else to make us all better.
Dodgers legend Steve Garvey has been our guest as we remember the voice of baseball, Vin Scully. Thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time this afternoon to chat with us about your idol in Vin Scully.
Well, thank you. Just one more thing. When I was inducted in the Dodger Hall of Fame, the Dodgers did a wonderful animated piece on my career from bat boy to right up to the end. And I put it on Instagram, Stevie Garvey 6. I don't know where the Y came from. And Vin narrated it. So if you'd like to hear his voice one more time, go to that. And I think you'll find it charming.
We'll share it. We'll share it from our account as well.
Definitely.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate the time.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. I'm honored.
There's Steve Garvey. Great to chat with him, and great to be able to connect with him quickly late last night. Maybe not as late for him on the West Coast. Whenever the news broke, the Dodgers were in the 6th inning, and almost immediately, right, he got back and said he's in. So that's awesome to have the chance to chat with him today. Coming up, let's a quick break, and then we will give you the breaking news from the NFL, which is they are going to appeal Judge Sue Robinson's opinion that Deshaun Watson should be suspended for 6 games for the upcoming season. We'll dissect what this means and now the process moving forward for the Browns quarterback. That's next on OutKick 360. There is the late Vin Scully, and of course, that is a condensed version, a heavily edited version of that Gibson home run.
How
The
amazing.
improbable and impossible line comes 35 to 40 seconds later after the homer.
He lets it breathe.
Yes, and you watch him around the bases.
How great is it that both he
It's one
and
of the
Joe
all-time
Buck
greats.
were calling it, and Joe Buck also has it. 2 classic calls, one on TV, one
Jack
on the
Buck.
radio.
Jack Buck.
sorry. Yeah.
And Gibson, I mean, just setting up, as he's at bat, it's like the 4th or 5th pitch of the at bat. And Vin Scully, and I would highly recommend, if you haven't watched the entire at bat, because we're familiar with the homer, right? If you've never watched the full at bat, the way he sets the storyline up and allows the moment to happen. If it's going to happen here, that's okay. But if not, I've got another detail to add in. And like the 4th or 5th pitch, and there's a dribbler down, and it barely goes foul. And he adds in that Gibson was so hurt. He was hurting so much, he doesn't understand how he can run halfway down the base path, and that's probably all he has left because he didn't even have the strength, and he was so banged up. He did not come out that was game 1, come out for the announcements of the lineups for both teams prior to the start of the World Series.
Go to the baseline.
So he stayed in the clubhouse. He was hurting so much. And so he adds that in like 2 minutes into the at-bat. And that's a pretty good detail that I would have thrown in like right out. I'm trying to force it in, and he doesn't do that, and that's what makes the entire call so iconic.
We talk often about the pace of baseball now. That game was pretty briskly played. I was watching with my college friends in a college dorm, and we didn't realize that was a walk-off scenario. Like we thought it was maybe the 8th or the 7th. We didn't realize it was the 9th. So adding to the drama of it when he hits it, and then the celebration is going, we're like, oh my God, that's it?
It's over?
Yeah. Like nowadays, you would never be, oh my God, that's it. You're like, oh yeah, it's finally over.
Oh, and that crowd was charged
yes.
when he came out of the dugout.
Anytime you get the shaking camera in a sports moment, you know it's big time. That's what I always love, those moments where the crowd is shaking the view of the play. And you could see the camera shaking as Gibson's rounding first in the home run trot. Terrific.
Coming up in just over 30 minutes, Will Power will be in studio. Driver, IndyCar champion, and current points leader. He's in town, of course, the Music City Grand Prix here where we are in Nashville. He'll be in studio with us, getting a chance to catch up with the Aussie, Will Power. Powerful name, as Chad pointed out, to begin the show.
Name.
The NFL has decided it will appeal the ruling from Judge Sue Robinson of the 6-game suspension for Deshaun Watson. I could have seen this going both ways here on their decision, and we can lay this out, but let's start with what they've decided to do. They are appealing the decision. Goodell has not officially named who's going to hear the appeal. It could be someone he appoints, or it could be him. And I'm interested to see what happens in that regard, too. But we know by appealing, the NFL now controls his suspension, which can be as little as 7 games. You wouldn't appeal it if you're dropping it. 7 games or indefinite. And I don't know why you appeal it if you're not going to do the indefinite suspension, because Judge Sue Robinson, in reading through her opinion, laid out the case for the NFL based on everything involved. But then she loops back in the precedent set previously. A lot of people are throwing out 12 games. 12 games and 6 games is not that big of a difference this year for Deshaun Watson on precedent. If you're really trying to set the next level of what the next judge on the ruling will look at, you look at this. However, we also heard from Michael McCann yesterday, who said that on the appeal, and we know Watson is going to sue, his side will sue. This will go to an appeals court to oversee what the collective bargaining agreement said and what Judge Sue Robinson said and what the NFL decided to do upon appeal. We know that they can come back and uphold it like they did with Tom Brady. Or McCann pointed out yesterday in his legal analysis at Sportico that they could also look at it a bit different than the way they did with Brady, because with Brady, it was Goodell, judge, jury, and executioner. And in this case, you have a former federal judge that has been appointed to hear this, who came back and said, here's why I'm ruling this way. And you need to set forth this in a parameter. If you're really going to go over the top, you need to set this in a parameter of a collective bargaining agreement in advance, instead of deciding that you want this to be a punishment that we haven't seen before in this regard. They could also get that ruling, but what they've done, Paul, Chad, they have extended this to the point where Watson could play week 1 if he sues and files for an injunction and it's granted, the same way Tom Brady received an injunction when he sued the league for his suspension over Deflategate.
Which basically delayed his suspension for a season.
Yeah.
He
But
played
he played
the season, then he came back, and it was
Yeah.
upheld the next year. Yes. But in this situation, it could play out where Deshaun Watson could play the entire season, his first season with the Browns, and then get suspended for however many games the next year. It's funny you brought up judge, jury, executioner. Andrew Brandt just tweeted, Roger Goodell's role was changed from judge, jury, and executioner to appellate judge. But it's still kind of the same thing, is what we're seeing with this, that he could still come back and say, this is still what I'm going to do, or at least attempt to do.
I agree, Hut, that I think they'll go for the whole bundle and
I don't know.
a season or
If you know he's going to sue either
season
way.
plus. But I disagree that 12, I agree 8 wouldn't do anything, 10 wouldn't do anything. 12 would be double it. I think 12 would change the precedent. I do think they'll go for more than that, however.
Well, let me jump in briefly.
I think 12 would essentially kill the Browns season.
Well, but you kill fine, but it's the same result. I guess you kill the season. He's going to sue you either way.
Oh, yeah, he'll still sue you. But it changes the precedent, because if you win in court, you've doubled it.
But if you don't, if you don't win, like Michael McCann pointed out, he's playing this year.
Yeah, then it'll kill their next season if they win it.
I think
for
they
the next
win in
year.
court.
But
I think the
point
NFL
being 12 games to 6 games. If you're going to sue and file for the injunction and it's granted, again, that's a lot of. They've already said they're going to sue. They announced that before Goodell and the NFL announced that they're going to appeal. My point is, if you're going to go through this legal process and you've decided to do it, I'm not trying to add on games to this year. I'm saying indefinite. And let's just move forward with the suspension. If we win, we've got you in a suspension that's indefinite. And if not, well, I mean, it's a gamble you're going to take anyway, even if you're going to up it to 8 or 12.
Here, to me, is another failure of the union. They wanted Goodell out of discipline. This is the best they could do. And ultimately, it winds up again in Goodell's lap or in the lap of somebody that Goodell appoints. So they created, an appellate, Goodell as an appellate judge instead of a judge, which is no different if Goodell decides, as he has, to go to the appellate court. So this is the weakness of the PA again on display. They wanted to get rid of Goodell in this role, and they have not. The NFLPA is weak. The players cannot win what they want. All they can win is what the NFL is willing to give them, which is weakening the offseason program, getting additional time off in the offseason, all things that the NFL ultimately does not care about. Coaches may care about it, but the NFL ultimately doesn't care about what the coaches care about in April, May, and June. In terms of the extra game, the players didn't want it. It ultimately happened, and 18 will ultimately happen. In terms of Goodell's power with player discipline on a matter like this, they wanted Goodell not to be the guy who ultimately makes the decision, and here we are. They created an additional step, but ultimately Goodell or somebody who's following Goodell's marching orders will make the decision. The PA has zero power to affect the change that is most important to the PA.
But the difference is they have the former federal judge, a woman who has ruled that, in her opinion,
6 games.
It's 6 games, and it's based on precedent, and it is because they wanted an unprecedented suspension, and she has said that you need to give the players notice to agree to certain protocol on how this process is going to go about. That's the difference in the previous disciplinary hearings, and this one is they now
have a voice to take to court.
Yeah, and you point to another judge will read a former federal judge's opinion on it, unlike previously where it was Goodell, and Goodell.
But that judge may also, and I would bet on it, say, while you have that, you agreed to a CBA that lets Goodell overrule that. And that's on you.
Dove Kleiman tweets, Watson, in the end, Watson has gambled and lost. He had a chance to accept a settlement deal from the NFL of 12 games and a $10 million fine, which was his salary in 2021. He declined, and now with this appeal, he's going to serve a lot more than those 6 games. I don't know that we can say that definitively. And if I'm looking for the
could be next year,
easiest route right now for the NFL to take in all of this, to not get sued, to not go through another appeal, to not do, is what I brought up yesterday. If they want to take the easy road out, they did on one of two things. Not appealed this decision by Sue L. Robinson at all, move forward, said, we got a former federal judge who says 6 games. Who are we to say otherwise? The 6-game suspension stands. You move forward with your season. Deshaun Watson's back, getting enormous ratings every time the Browns play, starting in late October. The second easiest route the NFL could take right now, based on a previous report, would be to come back and say, we're appealing, we're adding 2 games to it. Because based on the report we saw, he would be willing to accept up to 8 games without appealing, without moving forward. So then Deshaun Watson wouldn't sue, wouldn't do anything else. He would accept 8 games. Now, Hutton, you brought up a good point yesterday. What is 2 more games really in the grand scheme of things, the NFL? Well, I guess if you're the NFL, the argument is we had this former federal judge who said 6. We didn't think that was enough, so we did something on top of it, and we added to it. So you could always claim you did something to appease those that are screaming right now about Deshaun Watson being let off too lightly.
She allowed the NFL to point to their 3-pronged case, and based on her ruling, she also allows Watson to make a case for a lawsuit and an injunction to play while they fight this. It's just an interesting play because we had
we got some new
yesterday.
News, by the way, guys, coming down. This is from Aaron Wilson and others. The NFL appeal filing does state the league is seeking a 1-year suspension of Deshaun Watson, per league source. This is what the league sought unsuccessfully before NFL disciplinary officer Sue L. Robinson issued a 6-game suspension.
And again, like that makes the most sense because you're not going to risk the idea that he plays this season unless you're going for the jugular. And that's what I don't know why you would go with what you were trying to negotiate with and instead just go over the top and then somehow meet in the middle where you wanted to begin with. The fascinating thing is they're willing to let this continue just to be a big story, which is going to continue for a while. These things do not move fast, and the only way to make it move fast was to accept the suspension and move forward. And it was the league deserves credit in that regard. I mean, there's certainly going to be players that don't mind the league punishing Deshaun Watson in a more harsh standard than what Sue L. Robinson recommended. But it also puts him in a position where the Browns have him on the field.
But imagine if they're good this year with him on the cusp of something, and then it goes on hold next year.
Well,
it's really screwed.
It's a screw job either way to the Browns. I mean, and look, the Browns,
rather
no one's
get
going
it
to show
over
pity.
with.
You know, they knew the risk when they did this. But it's going to be a screw job to the Browns either way, whatever season he's going to miss.
Not necessarily. If he plays this year and they make a playoff run, I mean, they have a very talented team.
Yeah.
They've been missing the quarterback. And before you say, oh, you can't just drop a quarterback in, go see Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You totally
yeah, sure. Look, if they win the Super Bowl, then mission accomplished. Doesn't matter what happens the next year.
I don't
if he
view
plays
it as
this
either
year.
way they're screwed. I mean, what we have seen so far in this entire saga is Watson winning. That's what we've seen.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're screwed either way if he has to miss a season. It's not going to be good for the Browns. They signed this guy, and it's guaranteed, and he has to miss an entire season, either this year or next. Yeah, if he appeals, sues, and gets to play this year, and they go on and win the Super Bowl, then I don't know that it matters as much the next year that he missed because they accomplished what they set out to accomplish. Keep this in mind, too. With Sue L. Robinson's 16-page statement, she has opened the door for Roger Goodell to do this. And hear me out on this. She agrees with everything the NFL argued. All three of these things happened. She also states, based on precedent of assault, it's 6 games. My ruling is 6 games. But keeps the door ajar to say that, but if you think it's unprecedented, then you have to make a decision on that. So this is now Roger Goodell and the NFL come back and saying, this is clearly unprecedented. Here's the precedent now moving forward. You get a season for behavior like this. So Sue L. Robinson, there's a lot of people saying, boy, she really, botched this or whatever you want to claim. I don't necessarily agree because from a legal perspective, she agreed with everything the NFL said as a judge and said, I can only go on precedent. This appears to be unprecedented, but the NFL has to now decide, leaving it open to Roger Goodell to decide, is this unprecedented or not? If it is, set the precedent. Well, now what's the precedent? Reports are telling us the precedent will be 16 games or 17 games in a full season for Deshaun Watson.
Brandt also suggests that this could open the door for negotiations again.
So they end up getting their 12?
Maybe.
But I still don't.
Now Watson has to bend the knee.
But I still don't understand. For those that say that 6 is an embarrassment, how is 12 great?
Why would Watson?
It's not great, but you compromise.
It's double. I mean, it's better than 6. I guess you could argue.
It's better than
it's definitely better than 6.
For one side, it's better than 6. For one side, it's better than season.
But here's the thing: Watson had a chance to agree to this reportedly before.
Yes.
If I had a former federal judge saying 6, I don't know the Watson's camp is going to come back and now agree to 12 if he didn't do it before the ruling. Right? From her, wouldn't you just fight it if you were Watson at that point?
I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in the NFL losing in court. I know the Brady thing went against them to a degree, but they've got a pretty good record in court, and I'd be pretty confident if I'm the NFL in my CBA, which says that Goodell gets
did the Brady thing go against them, or did it just delay it?
Again, Paul, Chad, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but you cannot overlook the fact. No one's saying this. You know who else has a pretty good record in court? Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. No, that's my point.
It is a risk.
I don't know that he would be in a hurry. Again, he's gotten better info since he declined to settle for 12 games. He has a female former federal judge saying 6. So if you're his legal team that has seemingly won at every turn, why would you agree to 12 now if you didn't before?
Also, now, though, take that away.
Yeah.
Would you take 12 now or season next year?
But you take 12 now. But again, all this, I see all of this. The NFL, what they're going for is the public relations victory here, right?
Yeah, and the power win.
Okay, yeah, yep. and that. But they have that they can impose any suspension they want now.
Right, but to be sure, it clears in court too. We're the boss, not Sue Robbins.
But I mean, I can't help but look at the fact that a player in Atlanta, in Calvin Ridley, is on an indefinite suspension for a 5-day bender on FanDuel or wherever it was.
$1,500 worth.
For $1,500 and a $300 11-game parlay.
Not even a night out
for
an
yet,
NFL player.
12 games is better than 6 for Deshaun Watson. That still does not add up in any negotiation. In no way do I look at those two issues as on a similar plane, or in any way is Ridley a shelf or two higher than that. So if they mean unprecedented, you come over the top with an indefinite suspension, effective ban, which is what you gave Ridley.
I don't have a problem.
If you're really looking for that, if you're looking for 12 versus 6, to me that does not send any type of message other than the fact we're looking for a way to give him a suspension that the public feels like is just, even though we're not bringing up any other type of suspension that's ongoing here. It just doesn't correlate to me.
I want to go on the record. I don't have a problem with Calvin Ridley and with any gambling thing being in its own silo, separate of everything else. You can't bet on games that you potentially have involvement or information in, period, and that's disciplined, separate and out of context with everything else. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I think that's a separate thing.
And that's let's also clearly state why that is, because it affects their business directly.
Right.
That's the sole. Let's not.
It could totally screw
let's not talk
everything
morally
from the
about
foundation.
anything. What Deshaun Watson's accused of doing is far, far worse than anything that Calvin Ridley has done.
But it can't affect the integrity of the game.
But it affects their business, and that's the hate. That's what I don't understand with this is the NFL has an easy out right now, and they're not taking it. And the easy out is to do nothing. They've got a federal judge who said this. They could have Deshaun Watson back, helping the business of the NFL even more in late October. And now they're going to take the approach of we're going to do something we feel is the right thing morally. To me, that's what a season-long suspension is by the NFL. They're saying that's too light. We don't agree with it. We're going to take the hard road, get sued, and give this guy a year, and we'll battle it out in court. The easy road right now is to do nothing.
Yeah, well, and you could point to we went through the CBA negotiations, both sides in good faith, that we would have an independent judge that would decide cases as like this. And you know, of course, you can't predict what case is going to be the big one first. This is certainly unprecedented. I mean, using that word again, and I don't disagree with it. But at the same time, you can't argue the fact that when you look at what she did, I mean, this was as independent and a step back and thought out and thorough as it could be, given what she had in front of her. That's also a fact here in reading through the details of it. And now, if you're just coming back over the top, then why did we go through the charade of what we just went through? If ultimately, if the NFL doesn't get their way, they're going to get their way.
So there's a number of reporters right now claiming, I'm trying to follow this in real time, so bear with me. A number of reporters are saying they're looking for a year, the NFL is, for Deshaun Watson. Adam Schefter has written in a story that's just published at ESPN, and he said on an ESPN broadcast, it's an indefinite suspension they're seeking. So I believe Adam Schefter.
See, I think that's crap.
That's what I said.
That's out.
But I said that yesterday. Like that is how you go about it. If you're expecting them to sue you, then you try to take all the power, Paul, to your point, instead of just floating out 12 games and when you could really tack on more. An indefinite is indefinite. It could be 12. Could be
ultimately,
ban. I mean, that's how we would interpret that. It's also, Paul, you're right. It could be used as a negotiating tactic. You're floating this news out there, and you're floating this out there because, you're hearing indefinite. You want to settle for 12?
Well,
but also,
Mary Kay Cabot
you're saying
also has
seeking. They're using the word seeking. That's a dumb word. They're not seeking anything. They're delivering. I mean, you don't have to go to Roger Goodell and ask him for something.
Right.
He's the guy that's deciding.
Well, maybe I used a poor word there. This is from, looking or seeking. Michael Fabiano is quoting Adam Schefter on TV saying the NFL is looking for an indefinite suspension.
That makes no sense for anybody to couch it that way. Goodell's going to Goodell asking for a season-long penalty?
I think what they're saying is
Goodell's
we know we're going to
taking it
get
to the
sued.
so
we're going to say indefinite suspension and then hope that we get the indefinite suspension
based on my
Goodell
point.
can deliver the season-long suspension. Then it gets challenged. But what Goodell delivers, Goodell delivers.
You're getting really worked up over some semantics at this point.
Well, I read into
because
that.
they're hoping the ultimate goal is reached. They're looking for that to eventually happen.
I also read into that they're going to appoint someone else.
Mary Kay Cabot also has video of Deshaun Watson being alerted by Brown's PR and being walked off the field during practice once the word came down that the NFL was appealing.
Well, we'll continue this discussion. Then Will Power joins us in studio on OutKick 360. Getting up in 8 minutes, we've got Will Power in studio with us. Team Penske in town, and so is IndyCar, former IndyCar champion, Indianapolis 500 champ. And the points leader, he's going to be in studio with us to chat about the Music City Grand Prix and his career and the sport. And I just hope we don't sound stupid with some of the questions we've asked him. We've got coming up. It's going to be a lot of fun. Fun would not be the way to describe the saga with Watson. It's certainly newsworthy. NFL's going to appeal. Chad, you said you saw video of the Browns coming out to inform him at practice today in Cleveland that the NFL would be appealing. And, of course, his team's already said they're going to sue. So here we go. More of the legal process and trying to dissect different ways to interpret what everyone means in all of this.
I think it's also important to note, just from the appeal standpoint and whatever goes to court at that point, once the NFL comes down harder on Deshaun Watson, which they're attempting to do, Deshaun Watson has never admitted guilt one time.
I know.
I mean, if he would have come out, people would come out and apologize, acknowledge something. He hasn't done anything. And I know we talked about that Brown statement, which I will still contend is very carefully worded.
I agree with that.
To say he's remorseful about the situation. The situation could be remorse in missing 6 games because he feels he's unfairly missing 6 games. And he's remorseful about that he signed this contract and can't play in every game. He has never admitted to anything along the way. The Browns have not really admitted to any wrongdoing by him.
The Texans have.
I'm not saying he's right.
Well,
kind of. They settled.
But the guy has faced 2 grand juries, and they haven't gone forward with an indictment, and he's never admitted guilt. That's coming up in court.
But it's a very broad
the NFL has
discretion that the NFL has with conduct detrimental to the league.
The NFL does not have the same burden of proof as the state or the government in this thing. So, yes, that's going to be on the NFL side.
And she found him guilty on all 3 things that she had to prove.
Correct.
So here's Jeff Darlington on Twitter. I'm told the NFL is appealing for an indefinite suspension that would be a minimum of 1 year, but perhaps more significant given the structure of Watson's contract. Source tells me the NFL's appeal will also include a monetary fine. Money is now a significant part of the equation. So
the money that's been thrown out there, by the way, is $10 million, which would have been his salary last year. They're trying to take that salary back that he earned for doing nothing with the Texans.
Report on the minimums they would have accepted last week from Graziano was $8 million.
But here comes we have to dig through the info because based on the way I read the CBA, you can only fine a player based on his base salary on week-to-week basis. So
you're going after last year's base or next year's base?
Well, go after last year's base last year. That's when they should have done something. Will Power joins us in studio next on OutKick 360. If you're driving around downtown Nashville over the last 2 weeks, the landscape looks the same, but the setup a bit different. Grandstands next to Nissan Stadium. You've got, of course, the river and everything that's being set up for the Music City Grand Prix, which is taking place this weekend. Second time we've had the race, back-to-back years now, and then we certainly hope after even the first contract becomes an annual event here in Music City. And we have former IndyCar champion, current points leader for IndyCar, former Indianapolis 500 champ as well, driver of the number 12 Verizon Chevy with Team Penske. Will Power joins us in studio. Will, great to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You get this all the time, but Chad, go ahead and let him know your observations whenever we announced he was coming on the show.
It's the most spectacular name for any sportsman in history, I think. It's right up there in the pantheon of great names, Will. The name Will Power has got to be an all-timer. I'm sure your parents knew that when they gave you this name.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. But honestly, my great-grandfather's name was Will Power, so it's named after him. He also raced motorcycles, yeah, that's it. Yeah, my name's William, but everyone calls me Will.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask this question, and hopefully you don't slap me for asking this. But do you in fact have a lot of willpower?
I do. I used to smoke and I gave up, so that required some willpower.
If I put cake in front of you now, you would resist it?
I would resist it because I don't want to eat any sugar before the race. So. Yeah, I think I do have good willpower.
I've always wanted to know the answer to that question. Now I know. Yeah. Willpower does, in fact, have great willpower, which is terrific. We were talking.
Mine comes and goes, if you were curious.
Yeah, I have none.
I have zero. So, yes, I'm glad I was not given that name like you are. So Nashville has been given this race, and we're excited about it here. I was downtown last year for it. A terrific event and very, very unique for us, in this city. In terms of road racing, where does this Nashville track rank in what you've seen and the difficulty level of it? Because we saw some issues a year ago in this race.
It ranks very highly. I think there's no other track that we go over a massive bridge and over a body of water. It's the city. It's right there in the city. It's an iconic city. I think we're really fortunate to be able to race here. The track itself is very challenging from a driving perspective. It's quite bumpy. It's very technical, extremely tight in a couple of areas, and it produces really good racing. So we're all really stoked to be here. Really happy that we get to race in this city and race on a very cool track. It rates very highly.
There's one spot last year where it seemed every time the tires touched, things stopped, and it bottlenecked the entire thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how common that is, generally speaking, but has anything been done there that might alleviate that? That was the only thing I found wrong last year, is it seemed like there were constant stoppages at that spot.
They have. They've moved the apex wall in on that particular corner where there was bottlenecks, which really would totally solve that problem. They've smoothed it in some areas where, transitions on and off the bridge, so it's less bumpy. It's a typical street course. You don't have any grass to run off. If you make a mistake, you're either in tires or a concrete wall. So there's always a chance that there'll be blockages, but I think that everyone last year wasn't really prepared for the track as well as they will be this year. They'll understand, the strategy, the passing zones, and I expect there to be a lot more green racing rather than running under the safety cars. So, it's a difficult track. It's really, really difficult to get right, and you'll see I'm going to say that you're going to see the biggest spread of lap times on a road course for the whole season at this track because it's so difficult. Normally the whole field's covered by 1 second, just 26 cars, less than a tenth apart. But I think you'll see bigger gaps because it's just so hard to get this track right.
That's a lot more fun to watch. I imagine it's a lot more fun to race, but are there tactical things that you can do in a race that has a lot more stop and go that can be advantageous?
there's definitely, strategically, as you saw last year, Marcus Ericsson, who won the race, crashed on the first lap before it even went green. He was up over the back of someone, and his strategy played out that he won the race, which is not that unusual in IndyCar. IndyCar is usually very difficult to predict a winner because there's so many good teams and good drivers that can win, and they've got great parity between the cars. So, but it's the race I'm looking at as the championship leader that's a bit of a wild card. It's not going to be that straightforward, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of it. So I'm definitely aware of that. And it's hard to go into a race predicting what's going to happen and have a strategy in place. You got to really, adjust on the fly.
Here you are with us in Nashville, getting set for the race on a Wednesday. What's your typical week like when getting ready for an event? Are you normally in town around this time earlier, and does that vary based on the track you're preparing for each week?
Yeah, well, I'm a day early just to do some work for Joseph Newgarden. So
in his town.
But a week looks like, so we finished. We raced on last Saturday, so I got back Sunday. But on Monday, I was in the simulator, so I was doing this track in a sim, like a big $10 million simulator. So it's ridiculously close. We got all our shift points, braking points. I mean,
how many of those simulators exist? How accessible is that simulator? You said a $10 million simulator to get to in different parts of the world.
There's I don't know how many. I mean, every single Formula One team has one. Each manufacturer in IndyCar has one. I think the NASCAR manufacturers also have them. I mean, it's becoming a very common thing. I mean,
so your team has one that you use?
No, Chevrolet,
okay,
which is the engine plant that we use. We use theirs. I mean, costs so much to develop one that you're better off partnering with a manufacturer, and that means multiple teams can use it. But it's crazy how close it'd blow your mind if you sat in that thing. Like you'll look around, it just looks like the city you're in. And
wow.
So it's a 360 view.
Yeah, it's this one is. It's a bit more than 180, and the car yaws like that. But some have virtual reality, some are 360. It just depends on.
Does it feel the same way in the seat as well?
You're using your race seat. It's a race tub, like the car, the actual setting that you'd be sitting in. The steering wheel is actually the race steering wheel. You put your own steering wheel on. Very close. Very like the bumps, the walls, everything. It is so close. It's pretty cool.
Will Power, our guest, how many times do you need to run the track, any track, a new track, before you feel like I'm race comfortable, I'm ready?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes you're right on the ball within 10 laps. You're feeling real good. Like your first run out, 10 laps, you're right on it. Sometimes the whole weekend you just don't get your head around the track. You just struggle.
Off week.
Yeah.
Or is it the track, or is it just an off week?
Yeah, it can be an off week. Plus the track's more difficult. A track like this would be very difficult to extract everything out of it, even in the first two sessions, because you're apexing walls. So how close you want to get to the wall. It's if you out you can't challenge the brake zone too much, because if you go too far lock up, you'll go into a wall. It's something that you would creep up on a little more, a track like this. But sometimes you just go out, roll out, and you're right on the ball. And it's like any sport. Some days you're really on, and some days you're not quite there.
Will Power with us in studio. What was the party like after winning the Indy 500?
Well, it was. I really didn't party. I won the race. I knew that the next week I had to race in Detroit, so I was in the championship, and I didn't drink anything. I didn't
except milk.
More milk.
Except the milk. That's the only thing. I got a restaurant for all the guys on my team, and went and had dinner with them, and then went to the driver's party for like 15 minutes, and then was like, I'm going to sleep, because they make you that week you have to go to New York and do all this media, and I wanted to be as rested as I could so I could go to Detroit the next week and do well, because historically the driver turns up in Detroit and is rubbish because he's so tired. So I wanted to be the one that actually does well.
I mean, yeah, you're excellent, and you do have willpower. But I'm thinking, man, racing's the one sport I can think of where you win the event, and you don't, you win the World Series, the Super Bowl, the Masters. There's people throwing a bash afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're on to the next one. Did you get to enjoy it the way that a typical athlete would?
Yeah, I absolutely enjoyed it. Like, I can't tell you the relief to finally win that race, considering, I'd been in the series a long time. I was a champion. I'd won more races than anyone in that decade from 10 to 20 and led more laps, more pole, everything. And I hadn't won that race. So it was a massive weight off my shoulders. And I didn't have to go out and drink or anything to celebrate. It meant so much to me, and I built it up so big in my mind that it was just a feeling I'll never forget. And we do get to, if you win the championship, you don't have to race.
And you know that
week
as well.
Yeah, you really celebrate after that one. Then you can go out and drink and have fun.
Get after it.
How did you do in Detroit?
I did well. I came out of Detroit the championship leader, and I don't know whether I even got on the podium, or I did well, much better than any 500 winner had done for a while. So I think I was quicker than all my teammates, and I think got the most out of it. So yeah, it was good.
Your brother Damien is a very popular stand-up comedian and writer. Do you guys compare notes on travel schedule when talking about the two lines of work that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, I get, I'll speak to him on the phone, and he'll be doing the Melbourne Comedy Festival or something, and it's just, relentless, and the schedule. So I understand where he's coming from, but it's a similar path, the hard work, like it would be in any sport, the sleeping on couches and trying to make it. The stand-up comedians work hard to make it and end up earning it, doing it as a living. So we definitely compare notes on that front.
Is there any alternate reality where he's the IndyCar driver and you're the stand-up comedian on another universe?
I would love to try to be a stand-up comedian. I'm not sure how he'd do he's actually really good at, like, I cannot beat the guy at ping pong or pool, or it really annoys me. So I kind of feel like if he got in a race car, he'd probably be good.
I mean, this is a talented family, because you're a musician as well, right? You play the drums?
Yeah.
This isn't just like a gimmick. Like, this is legit?
I
you do it at charity events.
I can play some songs. I could jump in and
were you in a band
play
early
along,
on or anything, but as a kid?
No. I mean, I didn't. I actually played the trumpet in a band as a kid, not the drums. Drums are way cooler, so I gave up the trumpet and went for the drums. But not in a band. I would love to be, but you just can't. You got to be so dedicated to your chosen sport if you want to win. You just can't take away from that. So the sort of time you have to put in to be a drummer in a band, like a legit tight drummer, but I can play songs. It's good to relax.
The F1 series certainly massively popular, and we've discussed the rivalries within it, and man, where is this in other sports? Can I assume that the rivalries are there? They're just not on reality TV on a series like that on a week-to-week basis?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean...
Same trash talk?
Same. Yeah, same. Obviously they fluff it up a little bit in Netflix, but the same intensity. You can't really be friends with your competitors because you compete at a very high level, so you wouldn't really be a good friend. You couldn't, you're just always guarded. I think IndyCar will end up having a show like that. They're working on it, and I think people will really enjoy it in our paddock. It's definitely, it's a bit more of a friendly atmosphere, but if you look through the field, in IndyCar, you've probably got 18 drivers that can win any week. In Formula One, you've got 4, maybe, but really 2 guys that just win. So it's a much tougher drivers series from that perspective, where Formula One's a very tough manufacturers series. The manufacturers, battle very hard. And then the driver, if he's lucky enough to be in the best car, he's just going to look like an absolute hero.
So, yeah, IndyCar, the car itself can go faster, like just straight line speed, right? But the difference is the braking and then the acceleration in the car itself?
Yeah, and so the Formula One car actually at the start of a race is the same weight as an Indy car, except we refuel, so over a whole race they're heavier. But when they go to qualify, Formula One is lighter. It obviously has a lot more technology because they allow it. The engine we're going to next year will be about the same horsepower, or the year after next, so it'll have the same power. So acceleration will be very similar. And IndyCar is really focused on parity.
Yeah.
Every single person in the field has a chance to win. They're very tight with the rules on that, where Formula One is about developing technology. And so there's a huge gap between teams. So the racing isn't quite as good. That's really the differences there.
What type of Chevy do you drive?
I drive a Chevy Suburban. I'm
surprised by that.
I have a Corvette.
Okay.
I do have a Corvette that you get the Corvette when you win the Indy 500. So I got the pace car that was that they use during the 500. So I have that. I drive that from time to time. But
what's the fastest you would go in a daily car? Not on race day.
Of the fastest.
What's the fastest?
Well, I don't want to get arrested. So.
Well, you want.
When's the last time you got a speeding ticket?
I did get recently. All my speeding tickets are only like 10 to 15 over. Yeah, I don't want to.
I have gone 160 in a car before.
Have you on the road?
Yeah, on a 2-lane road.
I was
an idiot, but my girlfriend at the time had a Mercedes compressor.
Oh yeah.
Convertible, and this is before her dad put the governor on it. And I said, we're about to lay into this.
Wound it up. I drove a Tesla the other day, and it blew my mind. For an electric car, how much power it had. Crazy.
How fast?
Wow, I was more the acceleration, but that thing.
The get up.
That thing would get well over 100 pretty quick.
Fastest in your career that you've gone?
Hey, it's 242 or 43, 243
What's the personal
or something
record?
In Indianapolis.
You gonna be able to break that?
Yeah, I think when they have that new engine, it's quite a bit more power. I'm going to say the top speed will probably be close to 250.
That is, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
It's fast.
Just ask Tom Cruise.
Yeah, well, Tom Cruise.
It's not bad while you're going in a straight line. It's when you see that 90-degree turn at the end of the straight that you've got to keep the pedal wide open. And the engineers, they see the data. So when you tell them, I was wide open, you see the little flutters. He's like, no, you weren't. You're shaking on the pedal. Yeah, I've had that. You're shaking on the pedal because it's fast. When you turn in at that speed and you're waiting for the car to set and feel where the balance will be, whether it'll be loose or push, is, I would say, the most daunting is the qualifying when you're doing that speed and turning in. And you don't know how the car will behave when it lands in the bank in there. That's the day I dread most.
Will Power in studio with us, Music City Grand Prix coming up this weekend. Main race on Saturday, but events downtown throughout the weekend. So in baseball, high school age is generally where we see scouts really dive into athletes. Of course, NFL's college. What is the age group where if you were looking over your shoulder and saying, hey, I'm keeping an eye on this guy for either my team, for Team Penske, or an opponent, what's the age where you really find out, okay, this guy's he's a shelf above the rest of the competitors at a certain level?
About 10, 11, 12, you start to see kids that stand out in karting. Karting's huge in this country, and it's huge in Europe and around the world. Super competitive fields. But you'll see some kids that that guy is standing out. And, he kind of obviously has a natural ability. And then, from there, once they get to this level, it's about the work ethic, because everyone's pretty good at this level. They're all natural, have natural ability. It's like how hard you work at that point.
We had Jimmy Johnson on the show. I said it was odd that a 40, I think he's 46. Maybe I'm getting that wrong.
Yeah, I think he's 47, maybe.
46, yeah. 47. Rookie of the year at the Indy 500, which was odd for him to receive that award, I think, based on his age and his career at NASCAR. But even he was saying, he's like, man, it's just a different type of sport. It took him a year, and not even a full year, but a year just to kind of get his bearings.
Yeah, and he's still improving. I was following him at the race last week for quite a number of laps, and he's just continually learning. I mean, it's just such a hard step from what he was doing to go to IndyCar. So it's kind of impressive that he got to where he has, and he's kind of living his dream racing an IndyCar after having that career in NASCAR. I mean, being a 7-time champion, then getting to go race the IndyCar series. I mean, I can tell he's loving it, and people have got to understand it's a tough transition. It's not. He was never going to just turn up and be at the front. It's too hard, too different.
Favorite country outside of Australia to race?
The U.S. I would say favorite country to race out of the U.S. Out of
easily.
Yeah.
What's your favorite European track?
I really enjoyed Spa. I raced at Monaco. That was pretty cool, but you couldn't pass. Yeah, I would say Spa, pretty good. Silverstone's pretty good. Spa.
Where's the easiest place to pass?
What track has the easiest? Actually, Iowa last week.
Last week or 2 weeks ago?
Iowa's a great little track for us. Great short bullring oval.
Will Power, Australia, and with the accent, I'm assuming it's not hard to be noticed downtown even without the racing gear on, right? Especially here in Nashville.
They love country music in Australia. I know that also.
Yeah.
So that's big here too, obviously.
Yeah. No, they do. They Australia's like a mini US. It's just not as many people.
All right, so we're going to an online sports betting FanDuel right now. We're going to put some money down on Will Power this weekend.
Absolutely.
Hunt's trying his best to incriminate Will.
How much should we bet, Will? How confident are you?
You got to remember, I'm in a championship fight. Like
I know.
I'm not going to take a big risk to win.
No.
I'm trying to get points.
So betting on him to win the championship is different from betting on him to win this weekend.
Race.
So how many races do you have left?
You got 4 left.
Oh, so you have to be very careful.
You got to play the game. I mean, you can't. Depends on where you are. Like if you're halfway through the race and it's like, yep, you're ahead of all the guys you're racing. There's 5 guys in the race in the championship right now that I can see. But if you're behind them, I mean, you can't just relax. You got to play that game really smart.
So it's not a good sign if you're the guy that's going up and over like Ericsson was last year. Yeah, well, it worked out. Well, he won.
Pretty good strategy.
By the way, Ericsson's the one chasing him. So
he is. Yeah. So this is a good track for him. If running over a car is a good thing to do.
Hey, man, he's not coming in here. I hope you win. We're pulling for you.
We're in your corner.
On Sunday.
Thank you very much.
It's been very cool to catch up with you.
Yeah.
We're fascinated by the sport itself because of the grind and the fact. I mean, it's just a different lifestyle and a experience. We will never. I mean, we're never going to be behind the wheel of an IndyCar.
Yeah.
And the fact that you made it and climbed the ladder, which was a long one. You mentioned 10, 11. When did you first race motorcycles?
Race car. Well, the first time I ever raced cars was when I was 16, but I raced go-karts before.
Go-karts.
Yeah. I was 6 years old, I think, getting in a go-kart.
How many years do you hope to continue?
I don't know. See what happens. I don't know. Maybe 4 more years at the maximum.
Wow.
Is that when your contract expires, or?
No. My contract expires next year.
Oh, okay.
So who knows?
Hey, Will, again, it's a pleasure to have you in studio. Real treat for us. We will be out there on Sunday and throughout the weekend as well. It's going to be great festivities with the Music City Grand Prix, and we'll be looking for the number 12.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, man. There's
Thank you.
Will Power. 250 miles per hour, Chad.
Yeah, I'm not going
Slightly
anywhere
faster
close
than
to
you.
it. And I'm shocked that you tried to do 160 also.
No, I
One
didn't
other-
try. Well, I didn't reach 160. I let off the gas. I just kept looking down at the speedometer and let off the gas and looked down.
It's a good strategy not to look
about
at the road while you're trying to
157.
do 150.
The dad then the maximum I think we could get it up to was 80 after that with the governor on. I mean, it's a big mistake with a Mercedes compressor in McMinnville, Tennessee.
Yeah,
everybody
not-
wants to
Kids
drive.
out there, listen to Hut.
Yeah, don't do that. Coming up, more headlines. We'll recap our chat with Will, and we will get you ready for the AFC North battle, Pittsburgh, and we'll take a look at Cleveland with or without Deshaun Watson with all the offseason headlines. Next on OutKick 360. Coming up on Friday at 6th and Peabody, the 6th and P Grand Prix. And what this entails is a great charity race here on the property at 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. We have the tricycles. This is not your 5-year-old's tricycle, though. This is like a $200 tricycle that they have ordered. They have 4 of them. And we're going to have some celebrities out. We're going to take part in this. We're going to be live on the stage at 6th and Peabody on Friday afternoon with the final race taking place at 4 o'clock. And we will crown our inaugural 6th and P Grand Prix with Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine, and OutKick.
Yeah, I had a chance to put my eyes on one of these trikes.
Let me see if I can show it to you,
That
Paul.
I believe
Yeah,
I'm going to be driving
tricycle
on Friday, and it's impressive. I wanted to look at it because I said I wanted to see the distance between pedal to the steering wheel to see if my knees would be hitting it. And they said, "Oh no, you'll be fine. We've had bigger people drive these, and it doesn't come close to reaching. So I should be good to go."
So here is an example of Paul, what this looks like. It's not your. This is much larger than what it looks. That's what she said.
Is he pedaling it?
Yes, you'll pedal it. The pedals are down here on the wheel.
Oh, okay.
So there's the actual.
I'm looking forward to seeing you that. You're going to look big on it no matter what, Chad.
Well, we're going to be on this, all 3 of us, to try it out before the show.
We're going to do some video.
That way
work
we can
on
speak
this.
on the actual vehicle.
Okay.
I'm going to be on it, Paul, but we can go ahead and
Chad's in the
say
final
this.
race.
I think Albert Hainsworth is going to be on it too.
Yeah.
So we're both going to look very large on it, but I'm not quite as big as he is.
Yeah, you're going to look small on it now.
I don't know. I think Chad will do just fine. In fact, I will place
Paul's
money on.
complete demeanor change when he found out he was going to have to be on one of these things. You notice that?
No, once Hainsworth's on it, everybody looks small on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. I still think Chad's competitive nature comes out on Friday.
Oh, absolutely.
He will
Yeah,
have.
I'm gonna give it.
We're looking at the willpower of OutKick 360.
I'm gonna give it the good old college try. I mean, look, I'm not in this thing. I didn't show up here to lay up, as they say in Tin Cup. I'm there to win. I'm not saying I'm going to, but I'm gonna try.
Also
I'm
safe-
also gonna try not to injure myself.
Well, sure.
There are 2 things that you got to attempt to do. You want to try to win, but the one thing in any
wanna
athletic
tear a
endeavor at
groin
this
off a
point
bone.
is that you want to avoid injury above all else.
That's important.
So you want to win. It's the balance, right? You want to win, but you also want to avoid any bad injury, which can be difficult.
Can be.
That's coming up on Friday, the 6th and Peabody in downtown Nashville. If you are around the Middle Tennessee area, we certainly hope you'll join us. The venue opens at 11 o'clock a.m. each and every day, and we go live at 2 o'clock on the stage on Friday. We're taking a look and looking ahead to the upcoming NFL season by previewing team-by-team off-season acquisitions and expectations organizationally for NFL franchises, division by division. And we started earlier this week on the AFC North. We wrap it up now. We'll get to Pittsburgh in a moment, but we start with Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns in the news, and certainly today, the NFL will appeal the suspension handed down by Judge Sue L. Robinson of 6 games. So as we look at the key additions and losses to the team for the Browns, we don't know where Deshaun Watson factors in immediately, because if there's an injunction granted and he gets to play until they actually hear things on a court level when he sues the NFL for whatever they're going to bring, maybe he plays week 1, maybe not. But right now it's 6 games out. They brought in Jacoby Brissett and also traded for Amari Cooper from Dallas. This is a extremely talented roster. Defensively, Myles Garrett, if you go on FanDuel right now, he is the odds-on favorite for Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL.
Love him.
They have a very talented secondary. They have athleticism at linebacker. They certainly have a run game. They've been lacking the quarterback. And so it comes down to if Watson is playing or not, because Brissett, while serviceable as a backup, is no starter. And multiple NFL teams have told us that by not
Passing
retaining
around.
him.
Yeah. But, I mean, they can still, like, if he can manage the game, I don't know if he's been on a roster comparable to this in terms of run game with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, offensive line, which is excellent.
Yeah.
And defense that should be good if it stays healthy. Keyed with Myles Garrett. Jadeveon Clowney plays well as a second guy. They've got good interior people. They're good on every level. The linebackers are nice. Denzel Ward's a heck of a player.
Yes.
They've got Grant Delpit is an up-and-coming safety. I like the personnel. I think they've got good depth. The whole question, like you're saying, is at quarterback. Brissett needs to just not mess up, really. And if he can minimize mistakes, they've got a formula to win against bad teams and to maybe stay close against good teams. And if you can go 500 against the good ones and beat the bad ones, you can be in decent shape.
Curious if former Vol Josh Dobbs ever gets in the mix there. If something happens with Brissett. That gives you a different option because he is someone who can use his legs to make plays also. It's so hard to really get into a deep dive with this team because I believe they are a Super Bowl competitor if Deshaun Watson plays the entire season.
Yes.
Their roster is that good. Even a year ago, they're 8-9. I think it was 8-9 a year ago, and they had all the issues of quarterback and injury and Baker Mayfield and everything else, and they're still a respectable team. I think that their division, while tough, is manageable for them with their roster. It just all comes down to Deshaun Watson availability, and if it's not going to be 6 games, it doesn't look like, with what the NFL is deciding today, but can Jacoby Brissett tread water long enough for Deshaun Watson to do something if it's longer than the 6 games? So many question marks about that team because of the quarterback position and all the uncertainty around Watson. Guys, I don't have a lot of question marks about everywhere else on the roster when you look up and down of it. Bringing in Amari Cooper. They're going to have weapons on offense. They've got a good defense. They got guys who can make a difference on defense, starting with Myles Garrett. I really like the Browns, other than not knowing what the hell is going to happen with Deshaun Watson.
Number 1 in rushing offense, 27 in passing offense. Usually if you're really good at one, the number on the other one isn't bad, but 20th in points. They need to score more, generally speaking. And where were they in
But again,
in
I think all that goes back to Paul Mayfield's situation a year ago.
Tied
Trying to play
for
through
13th
injury.
in points against.
Yeah,
so.
they were in a terrible spot with Mayfield trying to play through injury last year.
To the Pittsburgh Steelers, 9-7-1 last year. Ben Roethlisberger is out. Mitchell Trubisky is in. They've drafted Kenny Pickett. And the storyline here is, when do we see Kenny Pickett overtake Mitchell Trubisky? Because it appears as though it's Trubisky's season to start. And then if things go the way that many are predicting, we see Pickett inserted into the lineup in late October, early November. But this is also a Steelers team that, with an awful season from Ben Roethlisberger, we saw them in the postseason last year. They have extreme talent in T.J. Watt on the defensive side of the football.
Najee Harris.
Najee Harris is going to receive even more work, you would think, given their quarterback situation. At running back, I'm saying getting the football in the run game, because he was certainly used in the pass game last year. They bring over Miles Jack from Jacksonville. While I don't think they win the division, I don't think it's out of the question to think that they're exactly where they were a year ago, battling for a final playoff spot as not an average to below average team at best, but still grinding their way to a chance at a playoff game. And I'm solely basing this off of the fact that I'm that big of a fan of Mike Tomlin and what he's done. They don't bottom out. They don't bottom out as an organization.
This may be the single most underplayed storyline in the NFL in conversations, team-by-team conversations. They had the worst run defense in the league last year by game and by carry. Stephon Tuitt retires. If they can't fix that, none of this other stuff matters. And historically, it's unheard of. Pittsburgh can always stop the run. So if they can't get back to basics on stopping the run, trouble. if they can, then all of these things come in. And like you're saying, I don't know that they're going to be 4th, 5th in the playoff thing, but they could certainly, again, contend for that 7th spot where they were last year, even if the quarterback play is poor, if they can play Steeler football, run the ball, defend the run. But last year they didn't defend the run at all.
Yeah, to me, this is not a team that I would put ahead of Cincinnati
Not
or
winning the
Baltimore.
division.
Any of the teams. I mean, I can't put them ahead of any of the teams that they're last in that division. I had the utmost respect for Mike Tomlin and that organization, and it is very difficult for me to say these words about Pittsburgh, but I'm burying them this year. That's going to be a bad football team in that division. I don't see any other way around it other than, Hutton, what you're saying, that it's just a team and a franchise that seemingly doesn't bottom out. And they're not going to ever bottom out with Mike Tomlin. But every other sign to me, Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, the losses that we saw there, if they're breaking in Kenny Pickett at some point, even though I really like Kenny Pickett as a quarterback, he's not stepping in and lighting the league on fire. I think this is a pretty dramatic step down this year for Pittsburgh, and this is now the beginning of a rebuilding effort for them.
I don't love them, but I would say this. If you're picking a surprising team, they would be the least surprising team because of Tomlin and because of what they tend to do.
And you would also say they have a first-round quarterback that took over in this scenario to me. I don't see Trubisky taking them on the run of winning the division. To me, it's the rookie coming in and just lighting the league on fire. But so far, and it's extremely early in camp as we talk about Pittsburgh, there are not signs that that's happening anytime in the immediate future. Immediate future being like week 1. It sounds as though it's Trubisky, and they're waiting on. Tomlin said he's waiting on the playmaking qualities to show up for Pickett. The other
Tomlin
draft
also embraces this. Like Peter King led from Pittsburgh this week, and Tomlin's juiced by this. He's not down. He kind of said something similar to Vrabel, saying he doesn't rely on talent. Tomlin said, I'm not sitting around waiting on veterans. I don't count on veterans to carry this thing. So he's infused with energy by the newness of it.
They have George Pickens there. DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M was one of the guys that no one expected to fall to the 3rd round, and he's a interior defensive lineman that will help with that run defense that fell to them at a perfect spot. Intriguing team for down the road, 2 or 3 years from now, as they get things working under Kenny Pickett. But, can they play spoiler? Can they be a spoiling team that gets in, but really they don't look like a playoff team, but they are? They were last year.
Well, somebody's going to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and then here's the one that kind of goes against my opinion that they're going to take a step back this year and not be a factor anywhere, is the fact that we mentioned this last week. You could argue they're improved now at quarterback.
Yes.
From Roethlisberger, a Hall of Famer.
On either guy.
Either one. Kenny Pickett or Trubisky, because Roethlisberger was just a shell of himself last season.
Hit us up on Twitter with your thoughts at OutKick360. We'll recap the headlines of the day, get you ready for the slate of games on tap tonight, and preview what's coming tomorrow. OutKick 360 rolls on. OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. Braves have already played. They lost today to Philly. No doubleheader, though, right?
No doubleheader. They've got a 5-game series starting tomorrow with the Mets. So we're going to know a lot about the future of the NL East this year based on that 5-game set in Atlanta that starts Thursday. By the way,
Yanks have also lost 7-3.
OutKick has this story, but this comes from an interview on a podcast with Aaron Rodgers, where Aaron Rodgers did a deep dive and discusses his journey to self-love and how ayahuasca, a psychoactive tea containing hallucinogens, helped him reach the point he's at now of awakening.
It makes you throw up. It gives you diarrhea. It's completely like it's a purging hallucinogen.
Yeah, I think it's something that it makes you physically ill. That it's like a vision quest. Type thing. You take it and then you reach a point of clarity because it clears everything out.
We should send you on a trip to do that. Come back and report to us.
Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob's a better candidate.
Jacob just pulls out.
Jacob may have done it. Have you done it?
Hold on.
No.
Jacob's like, I believe I placed some in one of these moonshine bottles behind Chad. It's the red one. Don't drink the red because that's got ayahuasca in it. Yeah, that's not something that sounds enjoyable.
People
to me.
go to Peru.
Why not just take some other form of poison that's going to make you throw everything up immediately and claim that it's
because they don't have the benefits.
Gonna make
I'm being
you
devil's
hallucinate.
advocate for people who have done it.
Have you seen Rodgers' new tattoo on his arm?
No.
What does it say?
Oh, the one that he needed to explain
I don't know
to
what
everyone?
it says.
Oh,
It's
no,
the
I
two
know.
lions facing each other and the earth
Yeah, it's a
behind.
line.
I mean, it
it's got like a
means
map
something,
on it. Or,
He's supposed to explain it eventually.
it's got a compass head on it. I think also is part of it.
He explained it. I forgot who he was on with. They were asking him about it. It was NFL Network maybe, and it was a very long and drawn out explanation. But it has to do with his sign and all of the astrology. So
I mean,
he's not getting more normal as he ages.
He would be
But he's a damn
perfect
good
for
quarterback.
Bill Walton in 1972. Like that, he has just gone full hippie. I mean, I think him and Bill Walton could travel the country with the Grateful Dead if they were contemporaries at this point. His time and place is 1973 Portland, Oregon, where Bill Walton was with the Blazers at the time, not Green Bay, Wisconsin.
It is
with the Packers.
It's an extremely intricate tattoo, I must say. Like it's not something that looks like you just picked it off a wall and said, "I'll take that." It's
There it is.
very detailed.
Oh no, there's meaning.
Oh, but the detail in it is. I mean,
it's an excellent artist.
I guess.
The eye. I mean, I feel like he's got a
Well, I
third
say
eye
that like the
on his arm.
shading, the shading on the left part of the tattoo with the lion in the
Some
foreground
shaman.
and the shading
the
in the
artist
background.
Was some shaman.
Maybe it
Well,
was
the shaman also
maybe it was
conducts
Blue
the
of Earth.
ayahuasca.
I think his new girlfriend, Blue of Earth, maybe has some
Blue of Earth. Is of Earth her last
tattoo
name?
artist skills.
Paul, biggest surprise out at Titans camp so far? Is there a player that comes to mind?
Well, I think the health is the biggest surprise collectively. Traylon Burks doing what you would have thought he would do if he didn't have the semi-crazy offseason where he was absent a lot because of the combination of conditioning issues and asthma problems. So
Roger McCreary's mine.
he's terrific.
He has really turned things on over the last 3 practices.
And
or
Elijah
so.
Molden is the one health
pads
issue
came on.
who's out, and he's creating opportunity for Roger
The guy without
McCreary.
the quote-unquote measurables, when the pads started popping, he showed up.
Player.
Yeah. We're back at it tomorrow. We'll show up. 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern, across the OutKick network.
Do not block the box, but please lock your locks.